It is an honor to have you, Travis, in this podcast. I feel completely glad, completely joyful because you are one of the persons that I'm highly admire in this entire state of Ohio. And it's really impressive to have you as a friend. I try to follow all of your advices, all of your rules. I'm trying to follow. But as you know, as a teenager, sometimes we break the rules. We say, hey, Brooks, the rules are meant to be broken. So
Of
with
course.
that phrase and with that excuse, we always try to do things that are against the rules. So I'm sorry for that. But well, I'm glad to have you in this podcast. How do you feel today?
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for having me. It's my first time ever being on a podcast, so I'm really excited, really joyful. Happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So let's start with the first question. People want to know, how was your childhood? In what circumstances do you grow up?
Yeah, so it's hard for me to comment on the Peruvian aspect of America,
Mm-hmm.
but I can tell you from Western media, a lot of people look at America and they see money. They think a lot of Americans grew up wealthy, they didn't have to worry about money growing up, et cetera, et cetera. For me, it was actually completely different. My family really struggled financially growing up to the aspect or to the point where we were almost kicked out of our house or our apartment a couple times. But I didn't. I had a completely different childhood than most because of the fact that my family just really struggled financially. I didn't get to partake in a lot of like trips or school trips that my friends got to. I didn't get to go on like family vacations growing up or anything. The first vacation I ever went on when I was like 10 years old, and lo and behold, it was actually to Kalahari. First time I ever went to Kalahari.
You were a guest.
I was a guest. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. So that was the first and actually only time I went to Kalahari prior to working there.
Do you like the experience?
Yeah, I'd say it's built me into who I am today. So,
I
but
see.
so I went to my first vacation with my family wasn't until I was like 10. At the age of 16, I had to get my first full-time job at Kalahari in order to pay for my own expenses because my parents just couldn't afford to pay for me anymore. So we had two children in the house, me and my little sister. And once I hit 16, they couldn't really afford to pay for two children anymore. So the older child, which was me, had to go work for himself and fend for himself.
So you have let me say if I understood correctly what you say. So your family was struggling in your childhood to get money, and because of that, you need to afford a completely full time job on your own. You need to pay your expenses, right? And you
Exactly.
have an older sibling,
I do. I have a younger sibling. She's about 4 years younger than me.
4 years younger. Uh, mm, and you said you went to the Kalahari Resort for the first time at the age of 10 years old. So could you tell us or describe how was your experience in terms of guest satisfaction, customer service, or maybe some calls of attention?
Yeah.
Maybe you broke some rules in the water park. Who knows? Could you tell us about it, please?
I can try to comment on it as much as I can. I mean, I was 10 years old and it was in 2006, so it was quite a long time ago. But as a kid, like I didn't. It's hard for a child to expect too much guest satisfaction because once you go into the water park and you see how massive it is, that's what takes you away, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all you care about. That's what you're most excited for, etc. So I don't care if the line was 55 people long. I'm standing in line for a water slide.
Victoria
So
Falls.
yeah, exactly. So
understand.
I can't really comment on much of how my experience was in terms of guest satisfaction or any sort of issues that kind of arose during that time because I was 10. I didn't really care too much to look around to see what was going on. I just cared about the water park.
The water park attractions, how depth was the, for example, Tanzanian Twister. Most of the time, I just heard that people say about that one of the most dangerous attractions is Tanzanian Twister because most of the time, head guards, lifeguards, supervisors, any kind of staff from administration, and they jumped into the water, and sometimes they struggle too to save a sinking person, a person who is in distress, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess that being in the top of Tanzanian Twister also gives you some goosebumps, some courage, some, I don't know, bravery to affront, to overcome those adversities in life. Because a lot of people might say, hey, being in Tanzanian Twister is just kind of boring. Are waiting somebody to save, and you're worried and you're with a lot of pressure because you don't know what time that circumstance of dangerous let's say let's say, a risky situation, a your party situation is going to happen any moment. So you don't know. You're just expecting the worst. And that sometimes gets us on our nerves. I understand. So your childhood was kind of difficult, was kind of rough. You need to mature in an early age, right?
Yep.
Excellent, excellent. How do you perceive racism in your surroundings? Do you take it for granted, or do you take some actions to tackle it?
It definitely exists. And I try my hardest to take actions to kind of minimize the amount of racism going on around me. It is difficult, and it happens with everybody. I'm not going to give you any names, but I could say that there were a couple Peruvians who came in that showed some signs of racism as well. So no matter if it's American, Peruvian, Ecuadorian, Indian, anybody over the world, you have racism that's going to be persistent no matter where you're at. So I try to tackle it as best I can, try to talk to the person, kind of comforting them and assuring them that nothing bad's going to happen, that this experience might actually turn their idea of people with different ethnic backgrounds around, and it might completely change their life in a sense.
It all boils down to everybody is a family. We are under our skin of the same color, red, and we should treat others as we want to be treated, right?
Exactly.
It should be work like that, but sometimes things happen for a reason. Life just gives you some difficult situations to overcome. I get it. And as you say, it's from every culture. It's not just from a single nationality. That makes a lot of sense. Our female audience is asking if you are single. Are you?
I am not. I am engaged, set to be married in September of this year. Been with my fiance now for June will be 5 years.
5 years of
Yep.
relationship.
Yep.
What? That's amazing. Unbelievable. Hope the best for you. The best for you, and hopefully life gives you what you deserve.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
What you deserve in the future. Let's get into deep water. What is your biggest conviction?
Now, when you say conviction, can you go a little bit more in detail?
I mean, conviction is something that makes you up every day with motivation.
Okay.
Conviction is something that even in the hardest of times, you try your best to overcome those situations.
I got you.
In a successful way.
Yeah, so I've always been driven just by success in the workplace. So growing up, I was telling you earlier, my family wasn't very good financially. And the reason why is because neither of my parents were really ever successful in their professional career. My mom worked at a factory for about 25 years before they closed down. And my dad was constantly job hopping. And because I struggled growing up, I always told myself that once I got a legit job, that I wanted to run with it and kind of foresee promotion after promotion in order to never have to struggle financially like I did in my childhood. Or whenever I have children, I never wanted them to have the same struggles that I had growing up. So every day I am kind of motivated in order to provide myself a better life in the next upcoming years or just in the future in general. So I wake up every day and I tell myself that although it is tough and although doing the same job at the same company for 12 years now can get kind of tiresome, but it's the end goal that kind of keeps me motivated or that keep my eye focused on.
What you used to do when you had some issues with the guests, I mean, in terms of sexual harassment or maybe in terms of just not respecting the rules. I mean, most of the time head guards are in charge of managing that situation in a great way and with a lot of emotional intelligence. But is that only the reason, the factor that improves your performance as a manager, as a head guard, as a coordinator that you used to be?
So I wouldn't say that the guest interaction is what solely improves your ability to work in the workplace or in that specific circumstance in the water park. So I would say just the constant exposure, the constant gentle pressure to the water park or to the hospitality industry in general is what has caused me to improve over the years. Just dealing with different circumstances that made me feel uncomfortable in that very moment are what made me improve or what made me kind of look at the world in a different sense. So I've definitely been put in a lot of uncomfortable situations over the years, but I I realize now that it has really only built me into the manager or into the industry professional that I am today.
At what age do you think you get that high level of expertise in terms of positivity, integrity, in general, maturity?
I don't think it's a certain age that you get it. I think it's self-taught. So growing up, I wasn't always a positive person. I was kind of a pessimist, or I was just kind of negative going through my day-to-day routine. But then I realized how being positive really improves your life, not just your personal life, but the life of those around you. Having a positive attitude, or just constantly being in a generous mood, or just kind of constantly being there to help people, so to put them in a better mood, not only improves your life, but it also improves their life as well.
Everybody is gifted in this world with a single virtue that is outstanding among other people. So you know yourself. You're a grown man, a mature man. I consider you that way. So what do you think is the highest outstanding virtue that you have, and how do you perform? How do you perform the best of you every day?
So I think the best trait, or the best ability that I have, is just to handle people and just resolve situations. Not only am I really an outgoing or a really people person, but I tend to go out of my way to build relationships or build rapport. So in the case that there are issues in the future, they feel comfortable with talking to someone, or they feel comfortable with me reprimanding them, for example. So the way that I do that is I constantly just build up on it as time progresses. So to give you an example, for an international student who's only here for 3 months, I create that relationship prior to your arrival. I will reach out to you to find out when your arrival date is, introduce myself, let you know that I am here to help. Even prior to your arrival, you have questions about housing, like, I'm the person you need to reach out to. And I try to provide my contact information early enough so that they can ask questions as they come. They don't have to wait until a week before in order to reach out to me to ask me a total of 15 questions. And then once the international student arrives, I just build on that relationship each and every day. Whether they're coming in to pick up a package, I always tell them, have a good day or have a great day as they're walking out of the office. Every time I see someone for the first time, no matter who it is, I'm going to tell them good morning, or I'll tell them hello, ask them how their day is going, et cetera, et cetera. I just try to really go above and beyond for the people that live here, and let them know that I am the person that they need to come to, and that they can come and talk to me about any sort of issues that arise.
As a philosophy of Kalahari, the Kalahari promise, living the Kalahari promise every time, right? Like, I was talking to the general manager, Brian Shanley, and unfortunately he couldn't be here in the podcast now. But well, I was talking to him, and I want to share with you these little thoughts we were talking about. And he said that sometimes a manager should be fired, but it's not fired for me. It's fired for himself or for herself. So if you were in that situation, I mean, if you cannot handle the activities or the tasks that you need to every day as a manager, as a supervisor, as a coordinator, you just talk to the general manager, Brian Shanley, and Brian Shanley said to you that close your eyes and think that you are walking with me around the water park or around any department that you are in working, and then think that you are not going to come back. You're not going to come back again. This is your last day. How do you feel? In your case, how would you feel if this were the last day of working at Kalahari?
So obviously, to an extent, I would definitely be, I'd say, a bit heartbroken, just because Kalahari is my first job. I've been here for 12 years. It's all I've really known as a job. So to an extent, I would be heartbroken. But on the other side of that, I would feel very energized. I would feel very motivated, very determined, because I was getting fired that day. It is going to require me to start over, start new with a different company, work my way back up, create different relationships, learn something in a different sense. If I were to ever get fired from Kalahari, I probably wouldn't work in another hotel, because I've worked in a hotel for 12 years now. So I don't want to say I've mastered the hotel industry, but I have definitely gained enough experience in the hotel industry. So I couldn't tell you what exactly I would do if I were to get fired tomorrow, but I can tell you that I would feel motivated to start over.
Yeah, because life is about that. Like restart your life once again and again and again and again and so on. Because what will be life about otherwise, no?
Yeah, and it's actually good for stuff like that to happen. Because you have to learn how to put yourself back together. So, say for example, your body or your spirit is a puzzle. When you go through a circumstance like that, the puzzle breaks. When you do go through a circumstance like that, you figure out how to put the puzzle pieces back together in order to improve your life or in order to pursue whatever happiness you might have. So although it would suck, yeah, those kind of circumstances that you go through, they're good for you. They definitely show you how you as a person are able to put yourself back together when having to go through a very traumatic experience like that.
Thus, rather than say it is a bad day, we should say it's a character building day, right?
Exactly.
That's feel. I feel so motivated in this podcast now, and this is the next question. What is your conception of happiness? You were saying happiness is involved when you are motivating each day yourself and getting up and being inspirational with your single tasks and the common situations that you are involved in the water park. So the question is that what is your own conception of happiness?
I'd say happiness for me would just be waking up every single morning and not having to worry about anything, looking forward to what's going on throughout your day, feeling motivated to attend multiple different, like say you had meetings or seminars, whatever it is you have throughout your day, feeling motivated to tackle that challenge and overcome it. I would say that I struggle with allowing myself to be happy because I really struggle with the sense of being content. Once I am content in my life, my mind does not allow me to stay content, and I'm constantly looking or grabbing for more in life. And it's something I've struggled with in the past and still to this day struggle with. But it's a challenge that I myself kind of realize and I'm trying to overcome.
So you are kind of ambitious with your goals, right? That's an awesome point of view, because otherwise you will be on your comfort zone the whole time. There's no other option. We need to improve ourselves every day. And then what scares you the most nowadays?
I would say, that's a good question. Right now on this very day, not much scares me, but that answer could change in a year. I'd say one of my biggest fears is starting a family and then losing that family in one single action. Like for example, say I have a wife and 2 kids and they're driving home from a soccer game and they get into a car accident and all 3 of them pass away and I'm stuck by myself, right? So that's just an example, right? But I guess you can, in a sense, you could say loneliness. Scared to be lonely in life. I'm scared to have to go through too many traumatic experiences to cause me to be lonely.
I get it. I was talking in a previous podcast with a Brazilian called Livia Prado. She was working at banquets department, and she had I actually admire her fluency in English and the way that she thinks, because she said we were talking to each other about the biggest or greatest weakness of a man. I even asked that to a guest, and a guest just went out of the attraction and just escaped from me. But as you were mentioning, loneliness will be one of the bad sides of life. Even after the scary or being afraid of death, then being afraid of public speaking in the latter. I mean, and then loneliness, which is basically it will be kind of depressing, frustrating, being lonely. But what is your conception of loneliness? Because sometimes we are surrounded by people, we could feel loneliness.
Yeah.
And even on our own, with nobody around, we could feel loneliness. How do you perceive loneliness?
The act of your spirit being fulfilled. So, if you don't wake up every day knowing that you have a support system around you, or what people would call a village, if you don't have that village around you, or you don't feel like you have those different lines of support, that's what I would say is lonely. Like you said, the happiest people in the room could be the most lonely people in the room. Although those people know that they have a group of people around them that love them dearly, that doesn't really improve much of how they're feeling in terms of lonely.
I get it. So let's move on. Have you ever felt depressed? How did you overcome those negative emotions and feelings?
Yeah. Depression is something I currently struggle with, and I've really struggled with it my entire life. But it's just something that I constantly have to battle and constantly have to figure out ways to work around. So whether it right now, one thing that I've kind of come across that helps me is just taking a walk. So if I'm going through a stressful period of time, or if something's going on, just taking the minute to step outside, walk around the property, walk around Kalahari, whatever it might be, taking a walk or doing some sort of physical exercise definitely has helped me in the past.
Like keeping the mind busy, right? And
Yep.
Steve in a previous podcast too was talking about it, because sometimes we feel lonely, we have bad days. So in order to conquer that negative feeling, he, or sometimes with friends, he hang out or he eats something new or goes to a new place, etc. So that's great. We need to keep our mind busy, no matter what activity, but busy. That's the
Of course.
truth. That's the truth. Let's rotate. Could you briefly describe a 35-year-old Travis in terms of family, work, mindset, and holistic realization?
Yeah, I'm going to correct you there. The question was a 35-year-old Travis. I'm definitely not 35, only 27.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, don't get me wrong, but a 35-year-old mean like you in the future.
Oh, in the future.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So, it's definitely a hard question to ask. Right now, where I'm at in my very life, I'm focused on building my family. So getting married in September, potentially having kids within the next year or two, and building on my success. So just getting promoted from position to position at my current job or whatever it might be. That's kind of my two primary focuses right now. But who knows? It's hard for me to give you an answer to that question because it's constantly changing. My hero is who I am in 10 years from now. But 10 years from now, my hero is probably going to be who I am 10 years from then. So it's
Yeah.
constantly changing, and I'm just constantly focusing on improving myself on a day-to-day basis and how I can be a little bit better, even if it's by something as little as 1%. I try to strive for improvements on a day-to-day basis.
Like in the book, James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, he says in his book,
you've read it.
an habit should be easy, attractive, and satisfying. But in order to overcome those difficult situations, we gotta be 1% better each day. So in a matter of 360 days, we are gonna be like exponentially talking 27 or 37%. The thing is that we are not going backwards.
Yep.
That's the most important thing. What would be the greatest advice that comes from you for a new international student from whatever country he comes or she comes with?
Come into this internship and this experience with an open mind. I can assure you that if you've never been to America or experienced the United States culture, it's going to be a culture shock. The way we do things here are going to be completely different than the way that happens in Peru, Ecuador, South America, Europe, wherever you might be coming from. The way we do stuff in America is probably completely different than the way that you guys do stuff in your home country. So be open-minded, be prepared to feel uncomfortable. The way that I look at it, though, is I encourage people to feel uncomfortable, because if you constantly feel comfortable in life, you're not going to be making any progress. You're going to be constantly at just one spot in your life. Feeling uncomfortable, although in the time it does feel uncomfortable and it's not the best feeling, it improves you as a person in the long run. Be open-minded. Look forward to being uncomfortable and embrace being uncomfortable, and just make it the best experience. And just know that the best experience doesn't always involve partying. It doesn't always involve drinking alcohol with other Peruvians, other South Americans. Make it the best experience by getting the opportunity to be exposed to all these different cultures. Right now at our employee housing, we have people living from 7 or 8 different cultures around here. And I can guarantee you that you'll never get the opportunity to be exposed to people from 7 or 8 different cultures again in your life. It's something I've really embraced during my time at Kalahari, is being able to interact with all these people from different cultures, learn more, and just become more of a well-rounded, not just industry professional, but a well-rounded person, knowing how I can approach different people and how they view different or how they have opinions on different views, and how I can approach that different view, right? So definitely be prepared, feel uncomfortable, be open-minded, have a good time, and just know that you have a support system there. If there's things that are making you uncomfortable, things that are making your life chaotic or difficult in that time, you have outlets in order to improve that. Chances are, if you come and talk to me, I can probably resolve a ton of issues that you might already be experiencing at housing, because I've been at Kalahari for so long. I've worked at housing. I know how things operate, but I can't do anything if you don't come and talk to me about it.
So, in conclusion, never complain about the uncomfortable situations, being tough when embracing those fears, always try to take initiative, because that's a great characteristic of a leader. And I'm completely sure you are a leader, otherwise you will not be the ESS manager of the housing. And be responsible too. And what you said, open-minded, that's key also, because sometimes we are not facing the same situations we are used to face in our country citizenship. And be responsible, be mature. Eventually life will show you that difficult situations are just opportunities to grow as a person, as a professional, in every view, in different perspective. And the last question, and this is just a curiosity: what are the places you highly recommend that we visit in our trip to Kalahari in the ESS house?
So it all really just depends on what you're looking for. So if you are looking to ride a plane to different parts of the United States, I would definitely tell you visit out west. Just because for the listeners at home, the United States culture on the East Coast of the United States versus the West Coast of the United States are two completely different cultures, and you would not realize unless you actually put yourself in the situation to experience it. I could go on an hour, 2-hour tangent on how they're different, so I'll save that for another day. But I would definitely, if you're looking into flying, I would definitely recommend some cities out west, the Grand Canyon. I've never been to Los Angeles, but Los Angeles, Las Vegas, I heard those two cities are cool. My second favorite city in the United States, aside from Cleveland, is Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, Washington. What state is that?
Washington.
Washington.
So like so it's on the West Coast. It's the very corner. So right below Canada, over by Alaska. It's over in that area, but it's beautiful. It's I've been there probably about 4 or 5 times now, but I fall in love with the city each time I go back.
Awesome. So guys, now what are the most attractive places to visit when you are staying in the Kalahari ESS housing. And well, we finished the podcast. That was amazing. Was an honor again to be with you in this podcast, sharing some thoughts, sharing some experience, some childhood memories. All the time, life should be tough. Otherwise, we are not gonna grow. We are not gonna pass through that difficult, raw way of life.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It was a great time. I'm glad I sat down and did this with you.
Appreciate it, Travis.